Whether it's writing that email at night or staying late at the office, many of us are putting in longer work hours. And more than half of private sector companies may not be paying employees the overtime they pay that they are earned. And if challenged, they find themselves in financial hot water as a result. David Whitten is a founding partner with the employment law firm Whitten Lublin. Amanda Lang spoke to him earlier and asked how big a problem this is.
Well, I'm seeing more and more companies are becoming non-compliant as they reduce their workforce and these constantly reorganizing less people to do more. So I think the level of compliance has gone down significantly, and a lot of employers, to their credit or defense, don't even know what their obligations are.
So we've seen a couple of high-profile cases, right? The banks, the likes of that. Is that just the tip of the iceberg? Do you think we will see more of those kinds of cases?
Absolutely, because there are so many myths out there about one's entitlement to overtime. The most common being, for example, that if you have a managerial title, you're not entitled to overtime. Another one that I see or hear about all the time is I'm a salaried employee, so that must mean I'm not entitled to overtime. Those are absolutely incorrect.
How can people get to know what the truth is? Is it different for every employer, every business? Is it contractual, or are there actual standards and laws around this for everybody?
Absolutely. So the Employment Standards Act applies to most employees in Ontario. Federally regulated employers, for example, you and your team here, are covered by the Canada Labour Code. Yeah. If you need to learn more, contact the Ministry of Labour, find out whether you are in an exempt category of employment.
What are some of the jobs or situations in which you are not eligible for overtime?
Well, if you are truly a manager, not just in title, but in terms of supervisory responsibility, performance evaluations, authority, you're not entitled to overtime in that situation. If you're an IT professional that actually works with the hardware and the software, you're not entitled. But again, as I mentioned, salaried versus hourly, that has absolutely no bearing on it whatsoever.
One of the complexities here is we all kind of, unless you do a job that is, literally at a machine that shuts down at a certain time of day, most of our jobs kind of bleed over into our after-hours life. How do you describe overtime in that case?
It is difficult because if you're on standby or you're checking your email throughout the evening, are you at work? So it's a little bit of a gray area. Yeah. But I think you really have to, as an employee, keep track of your hours, make sure that, and as an employer, you're also recording the hours that your employees are working as opposed to ignoring them. That's what the banks did.
And so for employees that think they may be entitled to something, what can they do? What would you advise?
Well, both the Canada Labour Code and the Employment Standards Act contain reprisal provisions. So that means that you are entitled to make a complaint or an inquiry and not have your employment terminated or subject to discipline. So I would inquire with HR. I would ask the Ministry of Labour if you're at all in doubt and find out whether you're on solid ground.
So one of the things that would hold some employees back, even if they think they're entitled to overtime, would be reprisal. So what would be your kind of recommendation for understanding how to manage this process?
Well, I think you have to understand you're protected against that in theory, under the legislation and in practice. Where I'm seeing these claims come up the most so is now that people are being let go. For years they've been working excessive amounts of overtime. They didn't raise it earlier for fear of losing their job. Now they have, and they want to be compensated for it. And this is where employers are getting hurt because not only are they paying severance, but they're also paying out overtime claims that they may not even have been aware of.
So what should employers be aware of? What do they need to do to protect themselves from this kind of thing?
Employers need to audit their job functions to find out whether in fact somebody is in an excluded category. They're not just assuming that they are. They need to properly keep track of the hours and monitor the work that their employees are doing. Again, turning a blind eye is not going to eliminate the obligation to pay them.
And if they do find they have an obligation to pay them, that could be expensive for a lot of employers. Is there any kind of, what would you advise them in that case? To have them do less overtime or actually just step up and pay it?
Well, I think what they have to do is monitor their workforce to ensure that there's enough people to do the jobs that they expect them to do, that the performance requirements are realistic under the circumstances, and to ultimately keep proper track of the hours so that they can accrue for this liability.
What is our kind of law relative to global laws? Are we in keeping with most sort of industrialized nations on this stuff?
Absolutely. Canada is actually very progressive in its employment standards, and we've had laws in place for years, and they are very much employee friendly, we say, so we are quite progressive in this regard.
All right, we got to leave it there. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you.